Here's a statistic that stopped me cold when I first read it. According to research from the Institute for Divorce Financial Analysts, money is cited as the primary cause of divorce in approximately 22% of all marriages. That makes it the third leading cause of divorce, behind infidelity and incompatibility. 1 in 5 marriages ends, at least in part, because two people couldn't figure out how to talk about money together. But here's the part that almost never gets mentioned. It's not usually the money itself that destroys the marriage. It's not that one partner earns too little or that they have too much debt or that they made a bad investment. It's the conversation about money, or more accurately, the complete and repeated failure to have that conversation honestly. That does the real damage. Silently, slowly, until it's done. And the most painful part? Most couples have no idea it's happening until they're already deep in the damage. My name is John, and I spend way too much time thinking about the intersection of personal finance and personal relationships. Specifically, the way that unspoken financial differences between partners become some of the most corrosive forces in long-term relationships. If you're in a relationship and money feels like a topic you and your partner avoid, tiptoe around, or reliably fight about without ever resolving anything, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today we're going somewhere that most personal finance channels never go. We're not talking about budgeting or investing or debt payoff. Not directly. We're talking about the specific financial conversations that couples either don't have or have badly, and the silent but structural damage those gaps create in relationships over time. And more importantly, we're going to talk about what the conversation actually needs to look like to work. Let's get into it. Section 1. Why money destroys relationships. The real mechanism. Here's the thing. Most people assume that financial problems in relationships are primarily about scarcity, that couples fight about money when there isn't enough of it. And while that's certainly a contributing factor, it's not the primary mechanism. Research consistently shows that financial conflict in relationships is almost equally distributed across income levels. Wealthy couples fight about money too. High-earning couples divorce over money too. Because the conflict is rarely fundamentally about the amount. It's about the meaning. Money in relationships is almost never just money. It is a proxy for a dozen deeper conversations that people struggle to have directly. It is a stand-in for power, who controls decisions, whose income matters more, whose goals take priority. It is a vehicle for security, whose anxiety about the future gets validated, whose comfort level with risk gets respected. It is an expression of values, what we care about, what kind of life we're building, what we're willing to sacrifice for. And it is, perhaps most consequentially, a measure of trust. Are we honest with each other about what we spend, what we owe, what we're afraid of? When couples fight about money, they're almost always actually fighting about one or more of these underlying dynamics. The fight about the credit card bill is really a fight about control. The argument about savings is really an argument about whose vision of the future takes priority. The silent resentment about spending is really a simmering question about whether one partner's values are being respected. Here's what most people don't realize. Those underlying conversations almost never happen because they're harder, because they require vulnerability, because admitting that you're anxious about the future, or that you feel financially controlled, or that you have a completely different relationship with money than your partner, that is genuinely frightening in a way that arguing about a credit card bill is not. So the surface argument happens over and over, and the underlying conversation never does, and the damage accumulates. Section 2. The 6 financial conversations couples never have. Let me walk you through the 6 specific financial conversations that research identifies as the most consequential for relationship health, and that most couples either avoid entirely or handle so poorly they would have been better off not having them at all. Conversation 1. The money story conversation. Every person walking into a relationship carries a complete, largely unconscious set of beliefs about money. Beliefs that were formed in childhood, inherited from parents, shaped by formative financial experiences, and almost never explicitly examined. Researcher Brad Klontz calls these money scripts, and his research found for primary money script types: money avoidance, money is bad or corrupting, money worship, money is the key to happiness and security, money status, my net worth is my self-worth, and money vigilance. You must always save and never discuss finances openly. The overwhelming majority of couples have never compared their money scripts. They have never asked each other, what did money mean in your household growing up? What was the emotional atmosphere around finances in your family? Did your parents fight about money? Were you raised with scarcity thinking or abundance thinking? What was the most formative financial experience of your childhood? These conversations feel irrelevant to managing a household budget. They are not. They are the foundation of every financial decision the couple will ever make together. And without understanding each other's money story, partners routinely interpret each other's financial behavior as irrational, irresponsible, or hostile, when it is usually neither. It is simply a different inherited framework that was never made visible. Conversation 2, the full financial picture conversation. This is the one that surprises people. According to a 2021 survey by the National Endowment for Financial Education, approximately 43% of adults in committed relationships report having committed financial infidelity, lying to their partner about money, not misremembering, not forgetting, deliberately hiding financial information, credit card debt, loans, purchases, savings accounts their partner doesn't know about, investment losses. And here's what's important to understand about why this happens. Financial infidelity is almost never primarily about the money. It is about shame, about fear of judgment, about the anticipation of conflict, about a relationship dynamic in which full financial transparency feels unsafe or impossible. The person hiding the debt isn't usually hiding it out of malice. They're hiding it because they have never felt able to say, I am struggling financially and I am ashamed and I am afraid of what you'll think of me. The antidote is not surveillance. It is creating a relationship in which that sentence can be said, which requires a specific kind of conversation. Not a financial audit, but a genuine, mutual laying bare of complete financial picture, approached with curiosity rather than judgment, and with the explicit understanding that the goal is shared clarity, not individual accountability. Conversation 3, the values and vision conversation. This is a conversation about what the money is actually for, and it is remarkable how rarely couples have it explicitly. Most couples operate with implicit financial goals, vague, unspoken assumptions about where they're heading. One partner assumes they're saving for a house. The other assumes they're building toward early retirement. One partner thinks their financial priority is their children's education. The other thinks it's travel and experiences. These incompatibilities sit silently beneath the surface of every financial decision, creating friction without explanation, resentment without vocabulary. Research by sociologist Terry Orbich, who conducted a 30-year longitudinal study of married couples, found that couples who regularly discuss their hopes and dreams together, including financial hopes and dreams, have significantly higher relationship satisfaction and significantly lower divorce rates. The act of shared visioning, of actually articulating and aligning on what the money is building toward, is not a financial exercise. It is a relationship exercise with financial benefits. The conversation is simple in concept and genuinely difficult in practice. What does your ideal life look like in 10 years? What role does financial security play in your definition of happiness? What would you do if money were not a constraint? These questions feel indulgent or abstract. They are actually among the most practically important conversations a couple can have. Conversation 4, the power and control conversation. This one is the hardest and the most avoided because it requires talking directly about dynamics that most couples experience but almost nobody names. Financial power imbalances in relationships are extraordinarily common and extraordinarily damaging when left unaddressed. The higher earning partner, consciously or not, often accrues disproportionate decision-making authority over shared finances. The lower earning partner, consciously or not, often experiences varying degrees of financial anxiety, dependence, or disempowerment that manifests as resentment, overspending, or financial withdrawal. A 2020 study published in the Journal of Marriage and Family found that perceived financial control, not actual income disparity, but the feeling of having equal agency over financial decisions, is a stronger predictor of relationship satisfaction than the couple's actual income or net worth. How the financial power is structured and experience matters more than how much money there is. The conversation about this is not comfortable. It requires a higher earning partner to examine whether they are genuinely treating financial decisions as shared. It requires a lower earning partner to examine whether they are withdrawing from financial responsibility in ways that create the imbalance they resent. And it requires both partners to explicitly discuss and agree on how decisions get made, whose voice carries what weight, and how the financial structure of the relationship reflects or contradicts their stated values about equality. Conversation 5. The financial secrets and shame conversation. This goes deeper than financial infidelity. This is about the financial history, the financial fears, and the financial vulnerabilities that each partner carries, and that almost nobody fully discloses to their partner because the vulnerability feels disproportionate to the stakes. Have you ever declared bankruptcy? Do you have debt you're ashamed of? Have you made financial mistakes you've never told anyone? Do you have a history of financial anxiety or financial avoidance that affects how you manage money today? Are you afraid of becoming financially dependent? Are you carrying shame about your earning capacity or your spending habits? These conversations are deeply uncomfortable. But here's what most people don't realize. The financial secrets you carry into a relationship don't stay contained. They leak. They show up in avoidance behaviors, in defensive reactions during money conversations, in financial decisions that seem inexplicable to your partner because they're being driven by experiences and fears your partner doesn't know about. The secret doesn't protect the relationship. It creates a room in the relationship that neither partner can fully enter, and the longer it stays closed, the larger it gets. Conversation 6. The ongoing financial check-in. This is the least dramatic of the 6, and potentially the most practically important. Most couples have financial conversations reactively. When there's a crisis, when there's a conflict, when a bill doesn't get paid, or a credit card balance triggers an argument. Very few couples have financial conversations proactively, as a regular, structured, low-stakes practice. Research on couples who maintain long-term financial harmony, and there is a body of this research, consistently identifies regular, scheduled financial conversations as one of the most distinguishing practices. Not long conversations, not heavy ones. A monthly or quarterly sit-down that covers, how are we tracking against our goals? Is there anything in our spending that needs attention? Is there anything either of us is worried about financially, and are we still aligned on our priorities? These conversations work not because they produce perfect financial management. They don't. They work because they keep the communication channel open and low pressure, which means problems get surfaced early rather than accumulated silently. And neither partner is ever sitting on financial anxiety for months, waiting for the right moment to bring it up. Section 3. Why these conversations fail. The psychology of financial conflict. Now, understanding what conversations need to happen is only useful if you understand why they so consistently don't, or why, when they do happen, they go so badly. Here's what most people don't realize about financial conflict in relationships. It almost always triggers a threat response that is neurologically similar to physical danger. Research by psychologist John Gottman, who has spent decades studying what predicts relationship success and failure, found that financial conflict in couples is distinguished from other forms of relationship conflict by one specific factor. It is significantly more likely to involve what he calls the 4 horsemen: contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling, than almost any other topic of disagreement. Money conversations go wrong not because couples are financially incompetent. They go wrong because they trigger shame, fear, defensiveness, and control dynamics that shut down productive communication before it can start. One partner brings up spending. The other hears criticism and gets defensive. One partner raises concern about debt. The other hears contempt and shuts down. One partner suggests a financial plan. The other hears control and stonewalls. And here's the particularly damaging part of this pattern. When a financial conversation goes badly, when it becomes a fight, when someone shuts down, when contempt appears, the couple learns, unconsciously but powerfully, to avoid the conversation next time, because the conversation has been paired with pain, and the avoidance accumulates, and the financial disconnect deepens, and the resentment grows, all because the conversation that needed to happen triggered a threat response that made having it feel impossible. This is where it gets really interesting, because the solution to this problem is not better financial education. It is not a better budget template or a stronger financial plan. The solution is a different conversational framework, one that systematically reduces the threat response that makes financial conversations unsafe, so that the actual content of the conversation can be heard and processed and acted on. Section 4. The framework. How to have these conversations without destroying each other. Let me give you something concrete, because I am deeply aware that you need to have these conversations. It is not useful advice without some guidance on how. The first principle is timing and context. Financial conversations held in the heat of conflict, when a bill has just arrived, when a purchase has just been discovered, when stress is already high, almost always fail. The threat response is already active. Cortisol is already elevated. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for measured, productive communication, is already compromised. The research on this is clear. Scheduled, anticipated financial conversations produce dramatically better outcomes than spontaneous, reactive ones. Schedule the conversation. Give it a specific time and duration. Approach it with a defined agenda. Create the conditions for a productive exchange rather than hoping they'll emerge spontaneously. The second principle is curiosity over judgment. The single most damaging pattern in financial conversations between couples is a rapid shift from discussing financial information to assessing financial character. You spent $400 on what? Is not a financial question. It is a character assessment. Why did you think that was a good idea? Is not a financial question. It is a contempt marker. And contempt, which Gottman's research identifies as the single most reliable predictor of relationship dissolution, shuts down productive financial communication faster than almost anything else. Replace judgment language with curiosity language. Help me understand what was behind that purchase, instead of, why would you do that? I notice I feel anxious when I see the credit card balance. Can we talk about it? Instead of, you're destroying our finances. The content is the same. The emotional architecture is completely different, and the emotional architecture determines whether the conversation can go anywhere productive. The third principle is separating the person from the pattern. One of the primary reasons financial conversations become identity attacks is that spending and saving behaviors feel like core personality traits rather than changeable habits. When one partner criticizes another's spending, the spending partner often hears a criticism of who they are, not what they do. When one partner expresses anxiety about savings, the other often hears a judgment of their work ethic or their priorities. Establishing explicit shared language. This is about our patterns, not our characters. And returning to it consistently when conversations start to slide toward character assessment is one of the most practical conflict reduction tools available to couples navigating financial differences. The fourth principle is explicit agreement on the goal. Before any significant financial conversation, both partners should be able to answer the same question. What are we trying to achieve in this conversation? Not what do I want to prove? Not how do I win this argument? What are we trying to achieve together? If the goal is to reduce anxiety about the credit card balance, the conversation looks different than if the goal is to assign blame for how the balance got there. If the goal is to build a savings plan you both feel good about, the conversation looks different than if the goal is to win an argument about spending philosophies. Naming the goal before the conversation starts and agreeing on it is one of the most underrated practices in productive financial communication. Look, I want to close with something I think is genuinely important. The research on financial conflict in relationships is not primarily depressing. It is primarily clarifying, because it consistently shows that the couples who navigate financial differences well, who build genuine financial partnership over time, are not the ones who never disagree about money. They are the ones who have found a way to disagree about money, without that disagreement becoming an indictment of each other. The money conversation that destroys marriages is almost never the one that's explicitly about money. It's the one that starts about money and ends as a proxy war for a dozen unspoken things: control, respect, trust, security, values, power. And the antidote to that conversation is not better financial literacy. It is better emotional honesty. It is the willingness to have the harder conversation that the money conversation is standing in for. Your relationship is probably strong enough to handle the truth of your full financial picture. It is probably strong enough to handle the conversation about power and control. It is probably strong enough to handle the disclosure of the fear or the shame or the money story you've been carrying. What relationships struggle to survive is not truth. It is the accumulated weight of all the truths that never got spoken, sitting between two people in the form of distance, resentment, and silence. Have the conversation. Have it carefully with the principles I've described. Have it before it becomes a crisis. Have it as a practice rather than a penalty. Because the financial partnership you build on the other side of that conversation is worth far more, financially and personally, than the temporary comfort of avoiding it. If this opens something up for you today, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this content reach more couples who are navigating this in silence. Subscribe if you haven't already, because every week we go deeper on the psychology and the math of money in ways that actually matter. And if you want to take the next step on the practical financial side, I've got a video on exactly how to build a joint financial system that works for both partners, with automation that removes a lot of the daily friction that creates conflict. It's linked right up here. I'll see you in the next one.